A warm welcome to all of you here once again on from my end, and a warm welcome to all our panelists here. Thank you so much. This is a power-packed panel, and we opened today after having heard a powerful set of speakers all morning. And I think we take the discussion forward in terms of what regulatory frameworks and policies and policymakers and academicians such as you, yourselves, and your peers can do in terms of coming together to make India a global talent hotspot. Of course, this is a very complex dialogue, and I'm sure there have been many forums which have discussed this at length. How I would see it as an opening context is it's a larger ecosystem at play here where a lot of things have to come together in order to make India a global talent hotspot. So, without further ado, let me kind of jump into some important parts that we can look at over the next half an hour or so. Very quickly, let me kind of invite Dr. Deshpande here. So, welcome to today's discussion. Uh, we kind of know that there is on one hand the NEP that is really kind of kicked off, and higher educations, of course, educational institutions across the spectrum have embraced it in many hues. Then we have, of course, the AICT, which is always there. We have the UGC, which has always been there. We have bodies working under them. There have been n number of policies. But as a senior academician, how do you really envisage or envision a policy framework that could really balance the influx of the growing talent of, which is kind of always coming from India, and also the influx of foreign educational institutions and global talent that's also coming in? Where do you think India really rates in on a scale of 1 to 10? So over to you, sir.
So thank you for having us. I think the most important thing when we talk of the global talent, India being a global talent hub, is let us understand where we stand. And I think we both, me and my colleague here, have the same point. But
They're
we
sitting
will
together
bring
by
out,
design.
yeah. But we will bring out the different aspects of it. So there is a global talent competitive index which done by INSEAD, and that puts India on at the rank of 103 amongst. So it's nearly at the laggard state. So if at all any one of us as a whole ecosystem feel very proud of ourselves, I think this is a reality check to be had over there. That's the first part. The second thing is, I think when we have the NEP, I think is it's a great document, because all the good things that are there to be said are mentioned in that. So I don't think you are going to find anything not applicable that is there in the NEP, and from that point of view, it is good. And as we move ourselves to an outcome-based education system, largely, uh, even the regulation needs to become outcome-based, because the regulation is still stuck in the era of process based kind of a regulation, where the thought process is that if you control the process, then you are going to be able to control the outcomes. But outcomes are not the centerpiece of regulation. So that's a fundamental change that the regulation needs to bring in, from both a mindset as well as what regulation is about. The third part is about the foreign universities coming in and all. In my personal opinion, it's most welcome, uh, for simple reason that as in the ecosystem the benchmark gets better, then naturally it uh, m- makes us all to try and reach out to those benchmarks. Having said that, I am not necessarily saying that a foreign institution coming into India will have a better benchmark, because perhaps they would discover, as uh, many others have, that the Indian benchmarks might be better than what they have to offer, and it's just their location which have been a determining factor of the perception of their being better. So that reality check is likely to happen, and from that point of view, both for the reality check as well as to raise the standard, I think it's a welcome thing. And uh, In fact, I would definitely even go on to add that it should be hastened and facilitated, so that we can reach out to that stage much faster than what is being how it is getting rolled out right now.
Sure, sure. So you rightly pointed out that when education is also coming to an outcome based mode, higher educational institutions are also looking at outcome based, point of views, then regulation should match up to it, should keep pace with it. On that note, calling you in, sir, here, Mr. Sinha, Shrikant Sinha, sir. Uh, how would you view where, he brought out a very interesting note that 103 is where we, kind of rated in from the global talent, value index. So, not a very happy state of affairs as on date. So, how would you look at outcome based policies coming in, and where are the gaps right now?
Sure. Um, Thanks for the question. I think first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for providing me an opportunity to share some of my views. If you would have asked me this question about 1500 years ago, I would have said we are number one, right? Because at that time, Takshila and all the other universities used to have a lot of foreign students. At that time, talent was what was being created in India. Unfortunately, today, if we look at it, our institutions have slipped back. We need to bring that institutions back. Today, if you look at NEP, it's not a magic bullet, but yes, at least a framework which is forward looking. All the things are in place. So if you look at it, first time I think where education and skills minister is the same. As a result of which, AICT, UGC, everyone is talking the same language. So gaps are being filled in slowly and slowly, but are we there yet? No. One big gap which definitely does exist today is if you look at our education system itself. While we are talking about multiple entry, multiple exit points, we are talking about formative assessment instead of summative assessments and authentic assessments, etc. coming in. I think we need to do a lot of work over there. If just to give a simple example, if we ask any college across India, a person who is doing the computer science or IT program student, how many full programs they have written, right? Maximum they will say 3 to 5 programs. An IIT could go to 10, right? But if you go to MIT and ask them, they have got a club called as 1 million coders, right? So they have written so many programs, they can develop programs. We are creating people for the operations and the service industry only, right? So these are the glaring gaps which are there. We need to plug them in. Computational thinking kind of things are just not there in our curriculum at all. We need to include that. Having said that, I think I would also like to talk about one more thing, since I'm also from the skilling ecosystem. I think now the next 2 years are going to be the most years where a lot of, if I try to predict taking a crystal ball and say, okay, this is how future will be, I don't think I can do that. But one thing we need to realize is that from a T, where you know a lot of domain areas, and you have one single domain where you are specializing in, it is moving to a pie, right? So one is your domain, one is the knowledge that you have, but now you have AI, ML, leadership, higher order thinking skills. All these things are also coming in, because tomorrow you don't know what it will be. So you have to prepare students for the future, right? And that is where we'll be able to win the talent war, if we are able to prepare our students for the future. Learnability, agility, adaptability, critical problem solving, decision making, though these are called as soft skills, I think I prefer calling them as essential skills. So apart from technical skills, you need behavior and you need domain also. So all these things, only when they come together would we be able to plug in those gaps.
Absolutely. And I think in this day and age, as you said, critical problem solving, which used to be known as, a semi hard skill and a semi soft skill, most people in industry, as well as, academicians such as yourselves, have pointed out that the definitions have changed clearly. It's easier to find people with technical skills, but or it's easier to kind of look at the actual technical part of it, but to get per person who fits the aptitude or the attitude to it takes a longer, takes the last mile problem always. But however, that was an interesting point you brought up. And the other takeaway I take from your response is also about India possibly having been number one, many, many years ago in ancient India when Nalanda and Takshashila really flourished. But yeah, well, let's see how, the full circle comes into. I would like to call in Dr. Ganesh Rao at this point of time. What are those couple of things, those gnawing gaps that you see? So brain drain has not been reversed. I mean, with all the educational reforms possibly kicking in, brain drain is still a far way off from getting reversed. I think that's a long drawn process. On the other hand, foreign educational institutions have come in now. Do you think that adds to the complexity of the problem? How do we find a balance between indigenous skill sets vis-a-vis international talent coming in, vis-a-vis Indian students still moving outside seeking greener pastures? So there are three problems here. So how does it add to the complexity here, sir?
Right. Very good afternoon and pleasure to be on this forum with the light panel. This question about the foreign people from international coming over here and how is it helping the indigenous skills and creating a sustainable future. Now, the moment we say international, we immediately jump to is either US or Europe. Sometimes it's Australia. We try to get the best practices from there, copy it here. We say we adapt it, but we try to implement here. Then we see that the results are not to that. We are not getting that impact. Okay. So the fundamental thing is that education should be relevant to the state of economy. It's very close to economics. Okay. USA is at a different league. We 140 crore population, out of which 100 crore are not are in the smaller cities and villages. 40 crores, we are one of those privileged people. So the upper crest is connected to United States, but the majority, 70%, lives in the, I would say, 20th century. A few in the 19th century also. So we are a complex country, and we need to understand that, and take that part of education from those economies. So rather than United States, which of course has got so many good things, we can look into China, $19 trillion economy. We have $4 trillion. Okay, they're probably about 15, 20 years ahead. Some things we can learn, something we should not. So if we try to model ourselves on what they did and how they try to skill their people, I think there's far greater impact that you can do at the ground level than aping the West. We have a complex, as I said, we've got a middle class, an upper class, and a huge class which is going to take you 20, 30 years more. Because it's not tech industries that we have that are hyped up, but we need to also work on basic industries. So we need a wide domain of skills needed for us to make an impact. And foreign universities coming may not at the ground level impact so much as they would add to the news value or the brand value of many organizations. We need to look internally and work out. We at 4 trillion need to go to China, which is 19 trillion, population same. We've got 142 crore population, only 4 crore students in higher education. Okay, with 70% of that 140, that's 100 crore, being below 30 years of age, and below 30 years, and with a age gap of 18 to 24 in the higher education segment. I think our 4 crore population, we have a huge potential. We say we are saturated. I don't think we are saturated. If we try to make it more relevant, we can at least admit 4 more crores, or maybe in the next 10, 15 years, 4 more, or even maybe up to 10 to 12 crores is what our true potential is. So we need to look internally, relevance to the economy, study more internally, and then adopt these models, and thereby make an impact on your economy. Thank you so much.
Sure. On that note, Dr. Reddy, calling you in here. In your experience, adding to what, is that fine? Perfect. So adding to what Dr. Rao said, what are those couple of specifics? How, while the complexity of the problem has been outlined here, what are those couple of specifics or examples that you can think of to address, this tripartite that has emerged, in terms of global talent coming in? It's most welcome, as Dr. Rao said, but how are we really looking at it indigenously? So a couple of things that you really think can be good examples for us to highlight to our audiences here. All yours.
Thank you. So let me continue from where Dr. Deshpande referred. So he was referring to one ranking by INSEAD, Global Talent Competitiveness Index, where India is ranked 103. In the same year, China is ranked 40. And they have considered 7 criteria. One such criteria is global knowledge skills, where we ranked better than many countries. What is that area? One in innovation, and the other one is the technology. So already India has demonstrated that we can be global talent hotspot in innovation and information technology. So taking cues from this, maybe we can replicate in other sectors. So what 2 things helped India to demonstrate the global talent, be the hotspot for the global talent? One, our natural ability to express in English. 2, our natural ability to excel in mathematics. These are the 2 primary reasons why we were able to quickly, initially low end of IT services, and then BPOs, then KPOs, and now I come from a place, Hyderabad. Bangalore and Hyderabad are the global hubs for GCCs, Global Capability Centers, that we are able to attract only because of this unique skill of combination of being innovative and having exposure to the information technology. This is at a specific case at macro level, and I want to share 2 instances from the institute where I represent. So I belong to a B school where I get students, around 300 students pan India, and we have student exchange programs where only 5 to 10 students are sent to European universities to spend 6 months exchange program. What happens to the remaining 290 students? So that's where we devised a program called Global Immersion Program, where all these students are, thanks to the blended learning possibilities now, sky is the limit for me to access to the global talent, be it professors or practitioners. And through online mode, I'm able to expose these 290 students to the global talent, and the embassies, connect with the embassies, I'm able to do campus immersion. This can be replicated by anyone. It doesn't involve any cost. The only thing we need is an online connection and the intent to do this initiative. And there are people across the globe who are keen to associate. Second initiative I just want to share, once again, couple of days back, AICT came up with this policy that higher education institutions are encouraged to partner with industries and offer industry track programs. So while AICT was contemplating, we have already executed. IMT Hyderabad, in partnership with HCL Tech, launched PGDM industry track program in IT. So I think these are the 2 examples. There could be so many, but I thought when you ask specifics, I thought of sharing these 2, which doesn't cost much. It is only the intent and the connect. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Dr. Reddy, you highlighted a beautiful point here, that regulation is kind of trying to keep pace with what higher education and industry are already set out to do, right? So sometimes I think the catch-up game becomes a little tough for policy makers as well. So it's about, I think, technology and advancements and the need of the world actually being much faster than what regulation is really kind of looking at this moment. I think the catch-up game is becoming more complex as technologies such as generative AI are also coming into play, and that changes the dynamic as well. So great points here. Thank you so much. Let me kind of move a little further into this. Let me call in Dr. Madhu here. So beyond metrics, so what would be measurable metrics in an outcome-based education system here? What would be measurable metrics for higher education vis-a-vis how they match up to envisaging themselves as putting in the right amount of talent pool, A, and vis-a-vis how they would look at themselves as a pool for global talent, India being a global talent. So how would you rate an educational institution on these parameters, being
Okay.
a honko of a premier
Sure.
group as well? And B, how do you think beyond these measurable metrics, how would an integration of diverse skill sets really fit into the larger goal of looking at India as a global talent hotspot?
So thank you very much for having me. I have a slightly different take. So while we're talking about a global talent hub, India produces the world's maximum number of engineers. Many of them are still unemployable. We have the maximum number of lawyers, but the highest pendency cases in this country. So whilst we are looking at a global talent, I perhaps would like to play a devil's advocate and say, could we have a decadal projection and think about what requirements are needed for India first? That's number one. Number two, if you just look at where India has been, we've always been a sending country. We've always sent students outside. But in the last, say, 8 to 9 years, we've become a country which is witnessing a tremendous amount of expansion in the higher education sector. That is absolutely given fact. The NEP is also very interesting. Of course, too early to tell. Now, the problem I have today is the challenges, the question that you asked about the parameters, the metrics. If you look at where India is in terms of research, in terms of experimentation, my colleagues here spoke about the index. If you look at where India is in terms of experimentation, we lag really behind. Look at terms of research and publications, we are not doing very well. Look at the top 1,000 universities, you'll struggle to find an IISc, probably a couple of other universities in the top 1,000 universities. So why aren't we not doing well? Whilst the regulatory challenges are good, it's light but tight. I think there has to be a lot more autonomy for at least the IOEs, and I come from MAHE, which is an IOE. I think there has to be a lot more flexibility for IOEs. There has to be regulation, there is no question. I would first look at the number of research publications, quality research publications that university professors are actually producing, and not quantity. I would also suggest to NIRF, which is now looking at number of publications, to also have a breakdown on what is the quality that we get. Citations, another thing that we don't do. Look at number of Nobel laureates that we're not able to produce, right? Number of science medals and stuff like that. So for a top university, it is about research. If you look at global talent, it is also about both students and faculty. Now today, Government of India is saying we're going to get the top 100 universities to come to India and set up. That's going to be a phenomenal challenge for many universities, because if Stanford and Harvard and MIT and Sydney and Melbourne are coming in, they're going to be recruiting faculty who got a very, very strong research record. So therefore, the PhD programs have got to be really good, really strong, and we are not competing with. One final point. You look at the GER of India, we're at 27%. Look at China, it's 50%. Look at North America, it's 80%. Now you can say it's not an apple to apple comparison, it's an apple to orange comparison. Then you have to go back. These are measurable metrics. These are very tangible outputs in terms of industry collaboration, in terms of setting up lots of research funding. One of the final points I would like to add is the Government of India has also got to give much more funding to private universities, because research is something that we're really struggling with. And it's all good to give to IITs and IIScs and IIMs, but for a large IOE like us, there has to be equal funding opportunities, because that's what makes you number one in the game. You have a lot of funding, you are able to produce great products, patents. Look at patent productions, for example. How many patents come out of India today? And these are all very, very specific outputs, right? Measurable outputs. So I'll leave it there. Perhaps, we can take a second round of questions from there.
Oh yeah, that's an awesome point. I think if we really look at now the onslaught of foreign educational universities coming in, research becomes the first
Absolutely
drawback that will come in. And I think funding becomes the next drawback. So drawing from what Dr. Madhu said, if I could bring you in, if these are going to be the distinct drawbacks, among other things you may want to list out as well, where can government step in? What can be the funding mechanisms for private enterprise? I mean, the larger IITs and IIMs anyways do get the cream of funding and research grants as well. But what else can, how can, the government and regulation really step in?
So I think what we need to understand, and what he said is absolutely right. For good music, you need musicians and you need the Bachs and the Beethovens, right? Skills people you need who are good musicians, but you need the Bachs and Beethovens who are the PhD and the researchers. But what kind of research is required? So government has to come up with some regulation which is linking. It has to be a PPP model. Industry, government, and the institution have to come together, and that is where the thing has to happen. You need to have industrial research happening. Academic research is good, fine, but has got no application, will not get funded. So you have to have industry based research happening. That's point number one. Point number two, today if you look at it, industry wants research done as of yesterday, right? Academia would do it after 5 years.
Exactly.
So I think the best via media right now is hackathons, right? Students get exposed to the best of the academia as well as industry to solve industry problems. Government needs to encourage these kind of things also. Second thing is, if we look at all our institutions, and I am sometimes surprised, and especially sitting amongst all the educators over here, we always talk about placements. Tell me one college which has said, I have produced so many entrepreneurs. Any university, any IIT, any institution has done that? No. Why? Because we are not recognizing it. And that is where government has to ensure that we give enough importance, and education institutions also give enough importance to entrepreneurship, because that's where the future is. Your organized sector will not give as many jobs as entrepreneurs and MSMEs do. So government needs to have schemes. For example, we have this apprenticeship scheme, right? NAPS and NATS, etc. are there. But is that implementable? Can we still run with it? Are our institutions actually wanting to go ahead and do it? And that's where government has to come up with proper rules and regulations, but it should be more incentive than less of stick. And that is where it is important. Having said that, I think I would also like to mention something which I found a slight disconnect. All these institutions that are coming over here are going to train our local students. So our students who used to go there, they will be now getting trained over here, apart from new people joining in. So it is not their skills. People who are coming from there are going to get skilled over here. Of course, it's cheaper here, but still that is not going to happen. Having said that, if we look at people who are coming from abroad, they are only coming at experience levels, right? So the international markets, if you look at the talent part of it, it is only experience level and not at entry level, which our institutions are producing. And that is where I think we'll continue to produce that. And we are already, if you look at Germany, if you look at Japan, if you look at so many other countries, we are already the talent hub for them to come and recruit people. Nurses and GDAs, etc., is just the starting point for that.
Sure. So we've kind of had one round of conversations, and we've heard you also, Dr. Sinha. Just a quick take from the other panelists as well. In the interest of time, very quickly, I want to hear from all of you. I think time just flies literally, and it's happened on the stage. So let's quickly hear back from each of you. Dr. Reddy, I will go in this sequence since we started off with Sir here. So what are the, since India has kind of really contributed so much, and this was a good point that was brought out by Dr. Deshpande also during the course of conversation, that, higher education, private higher education has really been one of the biggest contributors to the GDP through the talent it has sent out, or talent it's brought into the job market, to the industry. So given that, what are the top 3 things you would like to see changed from a regulation and policy framework in 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, thank you. I've already seen AICT and UGC thinking in this direction. There are 5 aspects which has to be focused. 1, student-centric programs, student centricity. Second one, funding in research should be increased. So I'm still waiting, when will that increase? And third one, assisting student mobility, student global mobility. Since 2022, I think both UGC and AICT are facilitating this. Fourth one, faculty development. Once again, both of them have the intent, both the regulators have the intent to adapt faculty development initiatives. And last one, digital learning. So these are the 5 aspects. If at all the players in the ecosystem come together, not just from the regulator's perspective, but HEIs, private players, industry, all of them, if we come together, I think in next 20-25 years, our rank from 103 will definitely be in top 30. Thank you.
Perfect. Dr. Deshpande?
Yeah. So 3 points. I think education, private higher education needs to now get recognized as an industry. I know it's a very contentious thing. Film industry got the recognition as industry, and that has, you see how the film industry has grown after that, and all the bad elements of the film industry got rooted out in that process by professionalizing it. And if that could happen to film industry, education should not be left behind, because we did a study, and as you rightly said, education is always looked at as a provider, whereas education institution create job itself. Education institute do capital expenditure, education institute do the regional development, so on and so forth. And as per our estimates, if it grows exponentially, it could contribute up to even 9 to 10% of the GDP, even when we're talking of a $5 trillion economy as envisaged by our Honorable Prime Minister. So I guess we have to take a next step. The incrementalism that's going on should be relooked at, and I guess we have to take a radical new step of recognizing private higher education as an industry and treating it as that. That's first. Second is from the industry point of view. Industry has got into that factory mindset, and they are still not able to come out of it, because they look at talent as just-in-time inventory. And that's where this buzzword skill has got a lot of traction, to much of my consternation. And as Mr. Sinha said, that might be okay for the low-hanging fruits, but it doesn't do any good for the word education. And if the word education has a meaning, due to paucity of time, I'll just restrict into this point. But if the word education has a meaning, then I think the industry will have to start learning that they have to have human capacity and not just a just-in-time inventory kind of a talent. That's the second point. And the third and the last point is, I think somewhere from a policy perspective, we have to look at something like a good city and there's a term, good job, good city kind of a workforce hub kind of a model, where all the stakeholders, education, government, the private industry, come together and develop specific workforce hubs where things as an ecosystem could function very well, and then that could get extrapolated to more regions.
Good. That's a good point. Yeah, the last point was actually fairly resonating. If that happens, nothing like it. Yes,
Thank you.
Dr. Madhu. Yes,
I
very
have
quickly.
4 very specific points I would recommend to the government of India. Number 1 is to give the fullest autonomy to IOEs so that they can go on and do the things that they should do. Number 2 is set something like a National Science Foundation in the US, or like an Australian Research Council in Australia, which actually provides for competitive grants, which we don't have access to today, at least for the private sector institutions. So therefore, that should be done. Number 3 is for the government to recognize through its ranking metrics, the NIRF, is the quality of research as opposed to quantity. While the quantity may be important, I think we are actually doing something very wrong by not rewarding researchers who produce the most outstanding pieces of work. Number 4, our PhD program needs a real relook. So there has to be a national level relook at the PhD program, because there is an absolute shambles. We are not producing talented PhD graduates. They're definitely not competitive in the global landscape. They will not be able to produce, or they don't even, many of them don't even understand what research is and how it should be done. I know I'm constructively critical here, but these are very important points for the government of India to relive. So thank you very much.
On the other hand, it takes talented candidates also forever
That's
to
why they go
finish.
out.
Yeah,
So
which is why they go out.
Why do you
right?
think? Why do you think Indians go to US or UK or TU
Correct.
or
So that
Australia
it
or to
gets
Canada?
over in good time. Yeah,
the reason.
good point, Dr.
Thank
Madhu.
you.
Yes, yes, Dr. Rao.
See, if we need to change, first is the mindset has to change. So we have to get into a nationalistic mindset of nation building to economy building, to business building, to people building. If the people have to be built, then the three parts, that's the government, the industry, and the education, have to work together. There are four areas which will be the game changers. One is the curriculum. I'm talking with specific reference to management education, and I would say education of the at the mass segment. Okay, see, classes are fine. The class segment is fine. They are self-motivated. So I'll talk about the mass segment more. The four areas. One is the content that we're giving. So we talk a lot of strategic management and everything in our MBA programs. I think we need to create more functional people. Okay, so we need to break up the program into two parts. One is the functionality. You develop them into finance professionals, marketing professionals, HR professionals, and all kinds of professionals. Management can come up after 3 to 5 years. This was what the original US model was. Our students start up at the age of 20, 21 into MBA. So, and we teach them strategy and strategic marketing management and strategic financial management could come a bit later in life. So once we do this change in the curriculum, that becomes relevant and they become what we call employable. We teach them and then we get the confidence out of them by saying, you're not employable. No, we do not have authority to say to somebody that you're not employable, because we as faculty are responsible for that result. The second is the corporate world. All of us, I worked for 20 years in the corporate, so we all come from the same colleges that we sometimes criticize. So we have also got trained in the same colleges. So if somewhere we need to stop this, we need to give more opportunities for internships to the students. The industry should be more caring, and even in cricket we develop a bench strength. So why don't we have a policy in which we have interns in each companies, and for example, in the 2-year period, the second year and bits and pieces of the first year are spent in companies on small projects. And once, maybe our generation, we did not get that kind of support from industry, but somewhere we need to stop. The moment we become compassionate, believe me, that generation, 15 years from today, 10 years from today, it will be a different generation. Gaps will always exist. Gap will always be there, but the gap will be minimal. Sure. The third is the academic people. The academic people have to change. Now everybody is going into the rat race of getting qualified as a professor, as an assistant professor, associate professor, and try to make up for those research projects. And in this game of numbers, a fundamental job of teaching the student, of coaching the student, of mentoring the student is taking a back seat. And we are in the race of ranking and ratings of institutions, which the students may not really count, but that's a subject of big debate as to who's ranking whom and all. So we don't want to get into that. And the fourth is entrepreneurs, creating entrepreneurs in colleges and creating that ecosystem is very important. So if you change over these four,
the buzzer here, it's sticking away.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think, do we have time for the audience questions here? No, right? Okay, great. I just hear from our team here that we are running a little behind schedule. So thank you so much. I would really thank our esteemed panelists here. My apologies. We could have really gone on with another 2 sequences if we had another hour at our disposal. This is a very broad topic. I think we've touched the surface here, and we've heard some fantastic, very crisp, no-nonsense inputs from all our panelists here in the kind of time that we had. Thank you so much, Dr. Rao. Thank you, Dr. Madhu. Thank you, Dr. Deshpande. Thank you, Dr. Reddy and Shrikant Sinha sir. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was a great, great panel which just kind of demystified and decoded the complexity of what regulation, what policymakers can do. I'm sure senior academicians such as yours can take something away and connect with them later. Thank you so much.